place that they were would get healed from something that everyone knew that they'd get sick of. And the next night, everybody was there. And then they would pass the plate, as you know, each night, they collect an offering. And then at the end of the week, the pastor who had invited him would take out, of course, his pay and salary, and then probably, what they call it, a building fund, a love fund. This is for the first lady, and by the time they get to my father, they would hand him an envelope for about $60 for a week of preaching. That's a hard way to make a living. So we were what was called the working poor. And a lot of people talk about when they grew up, they knew they didn't have any money. Well, they didn't know they had any money. They'd say, well, we knew we were poor. We did. I mean, we dumpster dive for pennies and nickels and quarters. And, I started working, I tell everybody I started working around 5 years of age, walking around, knocking on people's doors, asking to take out their trash or sweep their porch. And sometimes they give you 50 cents, maybe a quarter. My brothers who were stronger and bigger, it snows up in the mountain, they would shovel and do heavier jobs. They might get $10 or $20 if it was mythological. And really, that's how we lived. And I tell a story because it's not a sad story, it's just my story. And, I add to it that also my grandmother was a witch who dabbled in dark magic and all the other things that are in the Southern Gothic, arena. Well, who's going to tell that story but me? Who's going to believe it? I believe it. And there's all sorts of great stories like that. My father, eventually, he was Church of God in Christ and Baptist. And I think he got a little wise and decided to, this is no slight against those denominations, but he changed to Lutheran because they had health care and he had 6 kids. Sometimes you just gotta flip the script. So they sent him to the Lutheran Theological Seminary in Philadelphia. And when they did, that's when I got a chance suddenly, wow, I was in Philadelphia, where there we are in the mountains of Arizona, we're the only black people in our school, and sure there were black people in Arizona, don't believe that, but very sparse. But suddenly I'm in a Tarzan movie as far as I'm concerned. Black people all over the place. And I couldn't believe it. And they're talking about, lift every voice and sing, and we got an anthem, and what's going on? And it was a real, awakening. And the good news is that there were more services and more things talking about performing arts and culture that were not just directly related to adults, but to children. And so my mother had noticed that I had acted in a play when I was in 4th grade, and she said, hey, this is when I'm in 8th grade, or 9th grade, excuse me. She said, hey, there's a performing arts school, and it was my turn. Each summer, one of us would go when it was my turn. And she said, you want to go? And I said, sure. And in the 5th week of a 6-week program, a movie came to town. An independent film from Merchant Ivory. I don't know if anybody remembers Merchant Ivory. Merchant Ivory was like the Miramax of its day, so Daniel Day-Lewis, Helena Bonham Carter, they made movies that were very quality with a key. So they were looking for little girls to make this movie called My Little Girl. And so they came and they had us all audition. They said, hey, even if you're not interested in a career in the arts, you should audition. So we all did. And me being, very, best girl in class, I show up at 5:30 in the morning, second in line, and we start the auditioning process, and they pair us up, and we're going back and forth, and they're mixing us up left and right. Somewhere around 2 p.m., they stopped me and they said, hey, take a look at this role. And somebody hands me the whole script. Her name is Pat Golden, she's a casting director. And I was a little dejected because I was like, oh no, I must not be doing well. What is this new role? I didn't know, it was a lead role. And so after several more auditions, at least 8, and at least 4 to 5 screen tests, they gave me the role. They found me.
You earned the role.
Well, that.
They give you anything.
Well, there you go. All right. All right. I earned that role. I'm gonna change my story a bit. And it changed my life, but it didn't change my circumstances. My father, who had had his first heart attack at 35 years of age, would pass away very soon before I got to living single, frankly. And a person like me who was going to NYU at the time, I dropped out after 2 weeks. I did a world tour with Peter Brook in the Royal Shakespeare Theater, did the movie in Paris, came back, was doing an off-Broadway play where Camille Cosby saw me, and somehow got Bill Cosby to create the role of Cousin Pam for me. And I did that, and yeah, just before Living Single and between Bill Cosby, my father passed, and then I got Living Single, and the rest is history. But that's not the story I want to tell. The thing I want to say is, when I was discovered in Philadelphia when I was 14, there were a whole mess of other girls and boys who should have been seen and maybe had an opportunity. And I always remembered how guilty I felt getting that role and knowing how much they wanted it. And for them, I was some person who just walked in the other day and got a role. Many of those people had been in that acting school for years. And I thought to myself, if I ever did get a chance, I would show the world what type of talent was there. I wasn't going to get that chance for a very long time, because not only was I young, but I couldn't create. I didn't know how to write. I didn't know I was a tool in the toolbox at the time. I knew I had ideas even at 17 and 18, but going on the Cosby Show, I saw for the first time a writer's room. I really had never contemplated how these things got made and what went into it. So I started to write, and I wasn't very good at it. I didn't have the discipline. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know about structure, but I tried, and that was really sort of, do 10 pages and then leave it for 4 months and come back and not know where I was, and then say, no, but it's good, look at those first two, oh man. And just, it was horrible, because I had stacks and stacks and boxes of stuff. I ended up marrying a writer at some point, and he really said, you gotta sit your butt in that chair and sit down. It's a solitary effort, and it hurts, and it's not fun sometimes, but that's the gig. And eventually I got to it. And people started knowing me more for writing. And people ask me all the time, well, why don't we see you? And I said, well, you don't see me because there are not enough roles. And when I was first starting, there were very few roles for ingenues. And ingenues mean if you're young. And I wasn't even considered an ingenue. I asked my agent, I was telling her the types of roles that I would like to play. And I guess, I wasn't saying damsel in distress, because I've always been kind of strong and tomboyish. But I wanted to be, I don't know, the object of desire or whatever. And she said, oh, Erika, no one would ever mistake you for an ingenue. And I was 19. That's my own rep, my own agent. And she was right. At the time, I don't even think Nia Long had emerged, or Jada Pinkett, or some of the people who eventually become ingenues in so-called black films. You were either a foster child, which I played in my first movie, a slave, a hooker, all the things they did and talked about, Robert Townsend talked about, were true. It sounds like they were stereotypes, but they were true. And I would have to wait a long time before I became what would be the next step in a black woman's career, an authority figure, or the mammy. It's like, girl, you better get up here in my office, I'll tell you what. I said what you gonna say. I don't know, all that. And I don't know if I was black enough in this sort of stereotypical way that even black people started to create around us. And it's sort of, you must be crazy, all this stuff, and you come in here, you must be I just talked. And I wasn't gonna get those roles, not offhand, they would thank me for them. And so there were things that, that I think were in the air in the 80s and 90s around what it is to be black, what it is to be urban Southern, what it is to be gangsta, that kept a lot of people out of, I think, what would be the natural progression of just good film. And I think if you were a good filmmaker, you weren't really going to find much space. I'm just being truthful to how I felt. You had to write in a very stereotypical way, very male way. If you weren't a rapper, it's very difficult to get noticed, all that stuff. But I just kept writing, and the wheel turns. And guess what? The wheel did turn. Suddenly, I was going around, I'll tell this story really quick, because it matters to how I even got into comic books, which I do. I do something called Concrete Park with Tony Puryear, and we did that as a science fiction comic book, or that became a graphic novel, because we went around pitching it around Hollywood, and at one point UPN was interested because they had Spike TV and they had wrestling. And they thought, oh, they just canceled Star Trek, this would be great. They were gonna take a shot on it. But eventually that went away. We called that the Underpaid Negro Network. They left. All those small little, mini sort of networks sort of transitioned to, they got eaten by the big guys. And we went out again with our act and started pitching again. Now, if you know anything, I'm divorced from my husband now, but we're still creative partners. His name is Tony Perry. He's an amazing pitch guy. He's great. And he's also very visual. So he would put together these really great visual things, and he'd also talk his butt off in the room. And a lot of times it got us meetings, but people would look at us, and when they saw the visual of what we were talking about, Concrete Park with the brown and black faces, we wanted to do something in the future. We were very inspired by City of God and France Fanon ideology. We put all that in there. It was going to be the underlying structure. We didn't want to make something good, we wanted to make something honest and true, where we thought we could take the culture that existed, put them on another planet where anything could happen. So we would go around with this, and they would just sort of say, oh, this looks amazing, and we either would get back, or they'd push us up to a different person, or push us back, or whatever. So we worked really hard at one point and got a meeting with the president of blah, blah, blah. And we started to pitch, and Tony, just a few seconds into his pitch, it wasn't even that long, this white dude said, let me stop you right there. He said, black people don't like science fiction because they don't see themselves in the future. And we're like, okay. So he told us this story about a movie he made. And he made this movie and they had a focus test. And at the focus test, they had many different people there, but after everyone left, there was this young black man sitting in the front row. And they said, he just kept staring at the screen like he was puzzled. So they came from wherever behind their window or door, whatever that they were looking at. And they said, hey, sir, do you have anything to ask, anything we can answer? And they said, the dude said, yeah, I just want to know, how'd that nigga get to Mars? So we're listening, going, what's this got to do with us? Well, where's he going? Well, we got it. So Tony stopped him. He said, let me tell you something about black people. He said, for black people, the past is painful, the present precarious, but the future is free. We always create for the future, because you took away the past. You don't give us a now. And that's why you got rock and roll, and the blues, and jazz, and all these things we created that culture. We're the aliens that you took from across the ocean to rock your world and make your planets twirl.
Amen.
He didn't like to hear that. So he started pushing our stuff all around the table, going, what's this, what's that, and sort of denigrating it, and Tony gathers it up, he says, well, now you calling my baby up. He said, come on, Erika, let's go. And we're walking out. Now, when you really face something like that, that's so obviously racist and biased and ignorant, for whatever reason, the man's caught up in his brain. You think, oh, did we tell him off? It's actually not true. You feel so down. You think, wow, that was as high as we could go. They're probably the most likely place for us to be at. And we worked so hard and so tired. We got bills to pay and there's stuff to do. And you think, what else can I do? And we're just walking out feeling real low. And he looked at me and he said, oh, fuck it, I'll draw it. And he taught himself after 50 how to illustrate comics.
Wow.
He had a background a little bit because he went to Brown University, and they were doing abstract art, he said, in the 70s, really sort of, Pollock stuff, never that, and he'd never really done it, but he was a comic book fan. And he thought, you know what, the barrier to entry is low. It only take us, our sweat equity would take our story that we created, the mythology around it, and maybe there we can find somebody who will, give us a shot, and, we'll build it from there. Somebody, a few weeks later, he had a few panels, talked to somebody, gave him an email of Mike Richardson of Dark Horse. And he set up a letter, trying to explain himself, and trying to figure out the right words, and accidentally pushed send. And it went to Mike Richardson. And Mike Richardson got back within 5 minutes and said, this is interesting, let's talk. And the next year after that, we published. And in that year, we were a Best American Comic. And 4 years later, Forbes said we were one of the best graphic novels in America.
That's what I'm talking about.
So I tell you that long, shaggy dog story. to tell you that I know everyone here understands. And I say, I mean every artist, has nothing to do with color. How difficult it is to tell an idea and to get somebody to line up funding or even be interested in it. But that's what we had to do. And Tony, I should have mentioned, he was the first African American writer to write a movie that made over $100 million. He wrote Eraser.
Okay.
This is before all this. This is the action we had coming in the room. He had been one of the, he had he worked with Oliver Stone, Will Smith, written scripts for Mel Gibson, and all those things. Back in the day, they used to give writers, assignments, and then they just stack them up. So you never saw those movies, but that's what he did. And yet, we still couldn't do something with faces of color or women in them. So now we come to now, with the wheel turns, and here we are, and we've got a black world with Wakanda, or Black Panther, and we've got Scandal, and all these other things going on. But I'm here to tell you that I was there when after 2000, they segregated television. And if you weren't, maybe, Bernie Mac or Chris Rock, you had to either be on BET TV1 or blah, blah, blah. And that was after the success of Cosby Show, Will Smith, Family Matters, Living Single, Living Color, all that. They had made money. They had proven successful. You're not even talking about the Jeffersons and all those other places that were successful, right next to, any MASH or Archie Bunker or any of those other shows. Television wasn't segregated. We were all on the same, playing in the same pool. So here we are now in a world where you can feel there's a difference. Younger executives of all different colors, black, white, and otherwise, male and female, understand that we live in a diverse world, that it should be inclusive. But I still thought that they were still pulling from a place where you either had to have representation or, that type of thing. And I said, no, they're missing all the talent that's out there. And some of the talent, not some, a lot of the talent that's out there was not ready. They weren't. Many of you are professionals, and this is what you do, and you have some sort of idea in your mind about what it takes. Well, there's a lot of people out there who just think it's just the fact that they're a woman or they're this or that. I said, no, it's because you don't know how to write a script. You've never seen one. You turn that in, and it's crap. And I gotta be the first one to tell you, you just don't know, some people ain't ready for it, I said, no, you ready for it, we looking for it. So that's Color Farm Media. Me and my partner, Ben Arnold, thought we should create a company, not only because I didn't know how to market my own ideas and get the scripts that I had written out, which I'd written the horror thriller that we set up at Lionsgate. We're doing a movie about the Boy Squire of Harlem with Ava DuVernay's producing partner, Paul Carnes. Josh Green called me and I did a spin-off of the Watcher character for Buffy the Vampire Slayer about a black girl who's a vampire who's over 200 years old. That's just the stuff I had just waiting. And but what about everyone else? If it's so hard for me, imagine how hard it is for everyone else. And I met one of your friends who came in and I said, what are you looking for? What do you think's missing? And she said, access. Access. Well, that's what we try to make more accessible. We call ourselves at Color Farm Media the Motown of film, television, and tech. And if we hadn't had Barry Gordy and many of the impresarios that came and producers that came and created hip hop and found all those amazing people from Stevie Wonder to Marvin Gaye, what kind of world would we live in without those voices? Well, we're living without those voices right now, because film and television, as you know, is uniquely collaborative, and there's a different standard. And most people don't know how high up is. So we thought if we went around and gave people education and said, listen, we know you have something you want to make, so we'll help you make it. But let's make sure that you're in the best shape to be successful. And what does it do for us? It gives us credibility. It gets us to know who our community and that we're in the world too, and we hope that you support us because we're supporting you. Also, it helps to prove to them that not only are you out there, is that you're mighty, that you're the new majority, and they should be talking to you. They should be afraid of you. They should be excited to see you. But if they ignore you, then there's hell to pay, because you guys are the future, and that's just it. So that's what we call Keep It Colorful. Keep It Colorful is this initiative that we started, that we just said, let's go. And I piggybacked it on some of the things that I was doing, whether it was an independent film or speaking engagement, and we just hit the road, and we went to Cleveland and Detroit and Compton. Compton was just a few days ago, last week, and 600 people showed up. And Stevie Wonder got us on his station and let us advertise a Steve Harvey show, and Mayor Aja Brown made sure we had use of the facility, and 600 people came. And just like here in North Carolina, they answered the call because they knew Seed and Spark. I'll talk about Seed and Spark in a second, but we aligned ourselves with a crowdfunding platform called Seed and Spark. And Seed and Spark is a place where they're the most successful crowdfunding platform in the world. And it's run by this young woman named Emily Best. And Emily Best, I'm not the best little girl in the class, she is. And she's been doing this for a while. She's an amazing young woman. She really wanted to make sure that inclusion and diversity was like very much a part of what she does, and she backs it by partnering with other people. She said, listen, Erika, I'm really white, and they see I'm really white. But if they see me, they'll know I'm all right. It's okay, Emily, black people are cool. Y'all the one tripping. But I get it, and it's been nice, because I've been able to come out, and because of people know me from Cousin Pam and Max and all that, it's nice to put out a call. And call people more. But the truth is that you were listening to that call anyway. You're probably already inside of all sorts of interesting groups, and if you're not, this is what we've been finding out too. And I think a few people, maybe it was Lori, I don't know, said something about how many people here didn't know each other and should. And that happened, by the way, in Detroit too. Somebody got up and they were so mad and said, we all here, and we call people all the time to our events. We don't see you, we have funding and everything. We have trouble getting anybody in there. Well, there was lack of communication. We are in a diaspora, So we've been split all around, gentrification and everything's coming around and pushing us all. We're very few people, as much as we're communicating, talking to each other, and being able to really support. But can you imagine if we started to? If we had some place to land and really start to help each other? And the thing that we lament the most, we actually start to do, trade barter our skills to other people so they can get up, so we can get over. So that's what we're doing here. And so that's Keep It Colorful, and that's why we're here, and that's tonight.